नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Hare Krishna. Welcome to our third and last session on our Bhagavata Pravaha series on the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. In the last two sessions, we have discussed the first 7 chapters of second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And in this third session, which is the final session in second canto, we will discuss the 8th, 9th and 10th chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto. The second canto begins with the conversation between Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. At the end of the first canto, Parikshit Maharaj has asked 2 questions to Sukadeva Goswami: what a person is supposed to do throughout one's life, and what a person who is specifically going to die, what he is supposed to do. And Sukadeva Goswami answered the question saying that a person who is living, during his lifetime, that person is supposed to hear about Krishna, chant about Krishna, and also remember Krishna. And at that time of death also one is supposed to do the same. So Harer Namanu Kirtanam, chanting the holy names of the Lord and hearing and chanting about Krishna and remembering Krishna is constitutes the topmost responsibility of entire humanity, and that only will uplift one from this material entanglement and take one to the spiritual world. So like that, Sukadeva Goswami has glorified the process of Bhakti Yoga in the beginning of the second canto, and also to compare and contrast the process of Bhakti Yoga with Ashtanga Yoga, Sukadeva Goswami also described Ashtanga Yoga, and as a part of Ashtanga Yoga, Sukadeva Goswami described how an attached yogi or a neophyte yogi who still have a lot of material desires would meditate on the Virat Rupa or the universal form of the Lord. And he also described how an advanced yogi, Ashtanga yogi, would meditate on the Paramatma form of the Lord. And finally, he said that better than this Ashtanga Yoga is the practice of Bhakti Yoga. Only by Bhakti Yoga one can transcend this material existence and one can attain the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world. And he also said that Brahmaji has conclusively established that Bhakti Yoga is the topmost spiritual path. And later Sukadeva Goswami has also described the process of worshipping so many devatas to attain one's material benedictions. And Sukadeva Goswami said that even if somebody has material desires, still one has to worship Krishna only. Akamaha sarvakamo va moksha kama udaradhihi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purushah param. Even if somebody has karmi tendencies of attaining so many material benedictions, even if somebody has gnani tendencies of attaining liberation, or even if somebody has no material desires like a bhakta, still everyone can worship Krishna. And worshipping the Supreme Lord Krishna and practicing the process of Bhakti Yoga causes the ultimate spiritual benefit for the entire humanity. So Sukadeva Goswami has established the glory of Bhakti Yoga and compared Bhakti Yoga with this Ashtanga Yoga also in the first 3 chapters. And in the 4th chapter of second canto, Sukadeva Goswami offered his heartfelt prayers to the Supreme Lord. And Parikshit Maharaj has also asked Sukadeva Goswami, "Oh my dear Sukadeva Goswami, you told that Bhakti Yoga is characterized by one's hearing about the Supreme Lord. It's one of the important elements of Bhakti Yoga. So I want to hear about Krishna. And I first want to hear the activities of the Supreme Lord that he does with his external potency, that is, how he creates this material universe. And later I will hear about his intimate pastimes. So first I want to hear how the Supreme Lord creates this universe." And Sukadeva Goswami, to answer this question asked by Parikshit Maharaj, he quoted a conversation that happened between Brahma and Narada Muni. Once Narada Muni had asked 6 questions about the various aspects of this universe and universal creation in front of Brahmaji. And Brahmaji described how the Supreme Lord created this universe and he described the symptoms of the universe, how the universe is created, how the universe is conserved. Basically, the Supreme Lord is Krishna, and Krishna's expansion is Balaram, and Balaram's expansion is this Chaturvyuha. They are Vasudeva, Sankarshna, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. And from this Sankarshna comes Narayana. And from this Narayana comes another Chaturvyuha, Vasudeva, Sankarshna, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. And from the Sankarshana of this second Chaturvyuha, Mahavishnu appears. And from the bodily pores of this Mahavishnu, millions and millions of universes manifest. How do they manifest? Mahavishnu glances on the material nature or Prakriti and impregnates that Prakriti with so many conditioned living entities, the Jiva, along with their karma and svabhava, along with their fruitive baggage and their particular acquired natures under the influence of material modes. And when the jivas are induced, are injected into the womb of material nature, that material nature or pradhana would transform by the influence of time. That pradhana becomes mahattattva, and mahattattva becomes ahankara, and ahankara in the three modes manifests the 23 elements, the 10 senses, the 5 knowledge senses, and 5 working senses, and the 5 gross objects like earth, water, fire, air, ether, and also the 5 tanmatras are the sense objects, touch, taste, etc. And mind, intelligence, then all these things are manifested. And all these 23 elements, material elements, which are the ingredients of the universe, are amalgamated. They are combined together by the Bibhrat Shakti, or the amalgamation potency, the cohesive energy of the Lord, and they form the universal fetus. And after 1,000 years of such inactivity, where the universe is getting formed, this Mahavishnu expands himself as Garbhodakasaya Vishnu and enters within the universe and fills the universe, half of the universe, with his own perspiration. And this Garbhodaka ocean is formed. And this Garbhodakasaya Vishnu lies on this Garbhodaka ocean, and a lotus sprouts from his navel. And on top of that lotus, Lord Brahma takes birth. And later, in that stem of that lotus has this 14 planetary systems that will be eventually manifested. So, in this way, Sukadeva Goswami has described the process of creation, and he also described the manifestation of the universe, which is also conceived to be universal form. The entire universe, with all its elements, is compared with the form of the Lord. Various elements of the universe are compared to different limbs of the Supreme Lord, and this universe manifested, that means universal form manifested. And this universal form is an imaginary and material form of the Lord, which do not have an existence, which does not have an existence in the spiritual realm, but still it's a bona fide imagination, bona fide comparison, because everything is a manifestation of the Supreme Lord's energy, and the energy is not different from the energetic person, because energy cannot exist without the energetic person. And energetic person has no meaning without energy. Thus, energy and energetic person are non-different in one sense, in that sense. Thus, this universe, which is the energy of the Lord, or which is a manifestation of the energy of the Lord, can be compared with the Lord, can be seen as non-different from the Lord from that perspective. Thus, comparing various elements of the universe with the limbs of the Lord, and describing that as universal form is a bona fide imagination done by Srimad Bhagavatam. And after that, after describing the manifestation of the universal form, or the creation of the universe, then Brahmaji describes the manifestation of various other Leelavataras, or the pastime incarnations of the Lord, in the 7th chapter. After this, Lord Brahma concludes his teachings to Narada Muni, and instructs Narada Muni to expand this knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam. Thus, Narada Muni preaches this knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that completes the first 7 chapters. It's a very quick summary of the first 7 chapters. And now today, in this session, we will begin the 8th chapter. So in the 8th chapter, Parikshit Maharaj asked Sukadeva Goswami. In the first shloka he said, "My dear Sukadeva Goswami, You have told me how Brahmaji has instructed Narada Muni to disseminate this knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam everywhere in such a way that Bhakti Yoga is imbibed and practiced by people. So can you please tell me about Narada Muni's further preaching exploits? And please also narrate the wonderful qualities of the Supreme Lord and his potencies. So that will help me. If you narrate about the Supreme Lord and his devotees, that will help me to focus, to concentrate my mind on the Supreme Lord and in this last hour of my life. So Sukadev Parikshit Maharaj continues to express his deep conviction on the whole process of hearing Krishna Katha. He says in the fourth shloka, शृण्वतः श्रद्धया नित्यं गृणतश्च स्वचेष्टितं कालेन नातिदीर्घेण भगवान् विशते हृदि. शृण्वतः श्रद्धया नित्यं. Nityam means regularly, constantly. If we hear the beautiful pastimes and the qualities of the Supreme Lord Krishna, शृण्वतः श्रद्धया नित्यं granatascha swacheshtitam. And if we also imbibe this whole process of bhakti yoga with our own endeavors, we put our endeavors to understand the glories of the Lord and practice the process of bhakti, then kalena na ati dirghena bhagavan vrishate hridi. The Supreme Lord Krishna will manifest in our hearts within very short time. Kalena na ati dirghena. Ati dirgha means very long time, but na ati dirghena means within very short time. So within very short time, the Supreme Lord Krishna will manifest in the hearts of sincere devotees who hear his glories, who hear Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is the conviction of Parikshit Maharaj. So Parikshit Maharaj has developed a deep conviction on the whole process of Shravanam, and he is sharing his realizations, heartfelt realizations in front of Sukadeva Goswami. And Parikshit Maharaj continues to say, Pravishtah karna randhrena svanam bhavasaroruham dhunoti shamalam Krishna salilasya yathasharat. In this fifth shloka, Sukadeva Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj says, he says that Pravishtah karna randhrena, when the beautiful nectarian sound vibrations of Srimad Bhagavatam enter within the ear holes of a sincere hearer of Bhagavatam, Pravishtah Karanarandhrena Swanam Bhavasaroruham. Through those Bhagavatam sound vibrations, the Supreme Lord Krishna will enter through those ear holes and goes and sits in the lotus heart of his devotee. Swanam Bhavasaroruham. Saroruha means lotus. Bhavasaroruha means the lotus of emotions of devotee. The emotions of a devotee are also compared with lotuses. So Krishna will enter into the ear holes of hearers of Bhagavatam, because Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna. When we accept the sound vibration of Bhagavatam into our ear holes, it is Krishna who is entering into our ear holes. And he enters the ears, and through the ears he will enter the heart, and he would sit on the lotus-like emotions of his devotees. And Dhunoti Shamalam Krishna Salilasya Yathasharat. And when Krishna sits within the hearts of his sincere devotees who hear Bhagavatam, he would completely vanquish any sinful contamination which is there within the hearts of those devotees. Dhunoti Shamalam Krishna. Dhunoti means completely washing away. And an example is given. Salilasya Yatha Sharat. Salila means water. Sharat means Sharad Ritu, autumn season. During the rainy season, there is a lot of rain, and because of profuse amount of rain, the water reservoirs will become muddy and the water will become very brownish. But as monsoon comes to an end and autumn season just takes over, then in autumn season, the rainfall is not so much. There is no profuse amount of rainfall. There is very slight drizzling and very slight rainfall. That doesn't make the water bodies overflow. So thus these autumnal rains are said to be purifying the water reservoirs. So these slight rains, they will make the water reservoirs very clean. So just as autumnal rains make the water reservoirs very clean, similarly the entrance of the Supreme Lord Krishna within our hearts would completely make our hearts clean. So Salilasya Yatha Sharat. Then, with such a pure heart, in the 6th shloka, our Sukadeva Parikshit Maharaj is saying that with such a pure heart, a devotee is completely satisfied. So by hearing Bhagavatam, Krishna will enter the hearts of that sincere hearer and he will purify the hearts of the hearer. So that is what he has described in the last 2 shlokas. In the 6th shloka he says, Dhautatma Purushaha Krishna Padamulam na munchati Mukta Sarva Parikleshaha Pantha Swasharanam Yatha. Dhautatma Purushaha Krishna Padamulam na munchati. Dhautatma means when the Atma is completely cleansed of all sinful contamination. Atma is actually pure. The self, the soul is always pure, but somehow by the misfortune of the conditioned soul, there are so many coverings of material desires and false ego on the pure soul. So Krishna will enter the heart of a person and completely clean that person of all the sinful contamination and material desires. Dhautatma Purushaha. When the heart of a sincere hearer of Bhagavatam is cleansed, then Krishna Padamulam na munchati. Such a devotee will never give up the shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So by hearing Bhagavatam, we develop unlimited attraction towards Krishna's lotus feet. One will not give up Krishna's lotus feet. And Mukta Sarva Parikleshaha, one will be completely relieved from all material attachments. And he will be completely liberated and freed, and he will definitely attain peace. So Mukta Sarva Parikleshaha, all distresses are destroyed, and one can rest in peace. How? Pantha Hasva Sharanam Yatha. A Pantha means a traveler. He may travel to different places and he may experience a lot of fatigue and hunger and thirst, etc. And when he comes back to his house, his home, and he is lovingly served by people in his home, he feels relief. So he can be more peaceful. Similarly, the spirit soul who has been experiencing so many difficulties and distresses, miseries in this material existence, such a conditioned soul can be peaceful, can attain spiritual happiness by taking shelter of Bhakti Yoga. And an important, the most crucial element in this process of Bhakti Yoga is to hear about Krishna, as Krishna is described in Srimad Bhagavatam. So by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, one will be cleansed of all misgivings and one will be able to take shelter of Krishna without any deviation in the mind. So in this way, Parikshit Maharaj has expressed his conviction and faith in the process of hearing about Krishna at the fag end of his life. And from the next shloka onwards, Parikshit Maharaj asks us so many questions about Krishna, about the Jiva, about the universe, and about so many other spiritual subject matters. So the rest of the 8th chapter is filled with the questions asked by Parikshit Maharaj. And Sukadeva Goswami would be answering these questions more or less throughout the Bhagavatam in several cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. The first question that Parikshit Maharaj asked Sukadeva Goswami in the 7th shloka was, the Jiva or the soul is spiritual. How did the spiritual Jiva attain a material body? So the soul is spiritual, the body is material. How can the spirit soul attain a material body and undergo a lot of material miseries? That's the first question. Second question. This is about the form of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, Garbhodakasaya Vishnu. So now Garbhodakasaya Vishnu is entering the material world and the soul is also entering the material world. What is the difference between both of them? Are their forms same? So does the Lord have a material form? The Jiva has material form. The spirit soul attains a material body. So the Supreme Lord also is entering the universe. Does he have a material form? So he is asked about the form of the Supreme Lord, Garbhodakasaya Vishnu. And he also asked about Karanodakasaya Vishnu, Kshirodakasaya Vishnu, Hiranyagarbha. And he also asked about Kala, Karma, Swabhava. Kala is time factor. Karma is the fruitive reactions of the living entities. And he also asked how different places are created in this universe. What are the inhabitants? What are the dimensions of the universe? And what are the activities of devotees? What are the details of Varna and Ashrama system? and what are different yugas, what is the duration of this each yuga, and what are the different incarnations that manifest in the various yugas, and how to worship the Purushavasaras, what is bhakti, and like that so many questions Parikshit Maharaj has asked. Only questions are given here. The answers are there throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Sukadeva Goswami eventually answers these questions. And in the next canto, third canto, we will see that Vidura meets Maitreya. And we have already discussed in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Vidura was sent away from Hastinapur by Duryodhan, and Vidura went on a pilgrimage, and then he met Maitreya Muni at Haridwar, and he has heard two cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam from Maitreya. So there also Vidura asked all these questions, more or less many of these questions, to Maitreya Muni. And Maitreya Muni would answer those questions. Like that, the questions that are given in the 8th chapter of 2nd canto, asked by Parikshit Maharaj. So the answers to these questions are there throughout the Bhagavatam. And after asking these questions, Parikshit Maharaj told Sukadeva Goswami in the 24th sloka, "My dear Sukadeva Goswami, can you please answer all the questions that I have asked you? And you please also answer those questions which I have not asked. Because with my little knowledge, I keep asking some questions and seeking your answers, but there may be many other important subject matters for my understanding. And whatever you think that I should hear, whatever you recommend that I should hear, you please speak those subject matters also." So in this way, Parikshit Maharaj very fervently requested. He is playing the role of an ideal disciple. So he asked some questions, and he also said, "My dear spiritual master, Sukadeva Goswami, I may not be even properly knowing what to inquire from you. So you also start speaking whatever is beneficial to me." So he humbly asked, "And you are very specially qualified to answer my questions. And I am not fatigued due to hunger and thirst. Sukadeva Goswami, don't think that I am fasting for 7 days. Parikshit Maharaj would not be eating anything, he would not be sleeping, he would not be drinking also. So don't feel that I am afflicted with hunger and thirst. I can continuously hear, you can continuously speak." Then Sukadeva Goswami was extremely pleased with the enthusiasm, eagerness, and inquisitiveness of Parikshit Maharaj, and he started speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. He was ready, he was prepared to answer all the questions asked by Parikshit Maharaj. That brings us to the 9th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. In the 9th chapter, we will see the glorious Chatushloki Bhagavatam, and we will also see the answers to Parikshit Maharaj's questions. Some of the questions. The first question in the 8th chapter, 7th shloka, Parikshit Maharaj asked a question. His first question was, how did the spirit soul, the jiva, who is spiritual in nature, how did he come in contact with the material body? Spirit soul entrapped in a material body. This is the subject matter that he wanted to know. How does it happen? Then, answering this question, Sukadeva Goswami said, "O Parikshit Maharaj, the jiva actually cannot come in contact with a material body in the ultimate sense, but because of the jiva's misidentification with the material body, he is undergoing a lot of difficulties." Sukadeva Goswami compared the jiva's coming in contact with the material body with a person dreaming. So we may sleep, and in our dream, we may see that some tiger is chasing us. So there may be some tiger or a lion that is chasing us, and then we may feel very fearful. We may run as fast as we could as the tiger is chasing us, and we may perspire. We may be extremely fearful. So in the dream, the person is experiencing all this fear and anguish and then turmoil. Then somehow he escaped the tiger. Then in that fear, somebody may just get up from his dream. And then he will understand, oh, I am just dreaming. There is no tiger here. There is no lion here. There is no perspiration. So I'm happily sleeping on my bed, but somehow I had this bad dream. That's why I'm fearful. So within the dream of a person, one feels the fear of a ferocious animal. If only the ferocious animal starts chasing him. Similar, and the fear that he is experiencing, seeing the tiger or lion, is an imaginary fear. It's not reality. It's only illusion. It's only in a dream. Similarly, the pure spirit souls experience of various pleasures and pains in this material realm are also as good as a dream. So they are illusory in the sense that they are temporary in nature. Yes, the soul being entrapped in the material body is, in one sense, it is real because the material world is real. It's a manifestation of the Lord's energy. But the soul's identification with this temporary material world and material body is really false, right? It's illusory. It's misidentification with matter. The soul is spirit, and the soul is misidentifying oneself with matter. In the third canto, there is another beautiful example. If one's head is cut, can one see oneself in a mirror? Certainly not, because we see through our eyes. If one's head is cut and the eyes are gone, eyes are disconnected from the body, how can one see oneself in the mirror? But this is possible in a dream. In a dream, one can see one's head being cut off. Similarly, uh, the spirit soul ideally cannot experience any material miseries. But the spirit soul experiences material miseries because of misidentifying oneself with the matter, with the material body. If I think that I am not this body, then I will not be experiencing any misery. But if I think that I am this body, and whatever the body, whatever pleasures and pains are there for the body, will be experienced by the person because of that misidentification or false ego. So the jiva's connection with the material body is like a dream. Originally, the jiva is a spirit soul, a fragmental part of the Supreme Lord Krishna, as Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita, Mamaivamsho jiva loke jiva bhutaha sanatanaha. All jivas are amshas of Krishna. And the jiva suffers this aham mameti conceptions, me and mine. The jiva considers that I am this body and all the bodily possessions and bodily relationships are mine. So jiva considers like that, because of that there is suffering. But actually there is no suffering. If a soul starts considering oneself to be the servant of God and on a spiritual consciousness, then the soul need not suffer any material anguish. But if the soul considers oneself to be the body, then there is a lot of misery in this world. It's all about misidentification. Just like a person misidentifies oneself with a person within his dream being chased by a tiger. So it's all dreamy situation. Then Parikshit Maharaj asked many other questions also. To answer some of those questions, this Sukadeva Goswami quotes a conversation that happened between the Supreme Lord, Garbhodakasaya Vishnu, Krishna, and Brahma. So he quotes a conversation that happened between the Lord and Brahma. And because Parikshit Maharaj's second question was, what is the difference between the forms of Lord Vishnu and an ordinary jiva? So they both are entering the material world. So are their forms same? What is the difference? In essence, the answer is the Lord, although he enters the material world, he does not have a material body. He is always spiritual. And he exists before the creation of this material world. He exists after the creation of this material world also, during the maintenance of this material world also. And he also exists after the destruction of this world also. So thus the Lord's existence is beyond the existence of this universe. The universe comes out of him, goes back into him. And the universe, when it is existing, the Lord continues to stay. So thus the Lord has a spiritual body. So that fact will be spoken by Sukadeva Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj through this conversation that happened between Brahma and the Supreme Lord. So he says that when the lotus sprouted from the navel of Garbhodakasaya Vishnu, Lord Brahma has taken his birth on the lotus. Then Brahmaji performed bhakti and he got free from illusion. Now you see, Brahmaji was alone in the universe. he could not even see Garbhodakasaya Vishnu in the beginning of the creation. So Garbhodakasaya Vishnu entered the universe and filled half of the universe with his own perspiration, and that perspiration is called this Garbhodaka ocean, and Garbhodakasaya Vishnu lied on this Garbhodaka ocean, and from his navel sprouted this lotus, and Brahmaji has taken birth, and Brahmaji was alone. He was the first created being in the universe. In fact, the most qualified jiva is given the post of Brahma. Brahma is a post. And Brahmaji, when he appeared, he didn't know what to do. So then he has heard two words, tapa, tapa. Tapa means austerity. So Brahmaji in the beginning of the creation has heard these two words, tapa and tapa. And he was figuring out what is the source of this flower, lotus flower. Why is he existing there? He could not figure out in the beginning. But when he has heard this suggestion, tapa, tapa, he could immediately understand that let me just follow this instruction. That inspiration to follow that instruction was also given to Brahma by the Supreme Lord, Vishnu. Then Brahmaji started doing austerities. He did austerities for 1,000 celestial years. And Brahmaji, after doing these austerities, he got a vision of Vaikuntha, Mahavaikuntha. Vaikuntha is the supreme spiritual abode of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So Brahmaji was given this darshan, and Brahmaji could see this Mahavaikuntha. This Mahavaikuntha is freed from all dualities. Kuntha is difficulty or misery. Vaikuntha means the place where there are no miseries. So Brahmaji could get the darshan of the supreme spiritual abode, Vaikuntha, and he has seen all the Vaikuntha-vasis who are all in four hands. They were having four hands like Vishnu. They were all resembling Vishnu in their bodily conception, in their dressing style, in their holding of weapons and all. So they were similar to the Lord Vishnu in their forms, because they have all attained Sarupya Mukti. And all these Vaikuntha-vasis have very beautiful golden airplanes bedecked with so many jewels. Brahmaji describes the planet of Vaikuntha in the third canto to the demigods. There also very beautiful description of Vaikuntha comes. And in Vaikuntha, so many goddesses of fortune or Lakshmis would be serving the Supreme Lord, Vishnu. And the Lord is so beautiful, and he is worshipped by all his Vishnu Parshadas, all his devotees, men and women, gathered together and worship Lord Vishnu there in great love and in the mood of reverence, with great respect. And there are very beautiful airplanes there, and in those airplanes the Vaikuntha residents would move about along with their consorts, but the sense gratificatory desires would not enter the minds of all these people. So the Vaikuntha-vasis are never inclined to enjoy their senses, but they are always inclined to render service to the Supreme Lord Vishnu. They always are accustomed to glorify the Lord's activities. Vaimanika salalanaschritani shashvad gayanti yatra shamalakshapani bhartuhu antarjalenu vikasan madhumadhavinam gandhena khandita dhiyopyanilam kshipantah. Vaimanika salalana. All the Vaikuntha-vasis are accompanied by their consorts, and they are traveling in such beautiful airplanes. And the fragrance emanating from the Madhu Madhavi flowers from the beautiful water reservoirs of Vaikuntha would enter the nostrils of these Vaikuntha-vasis. And they condemn this fragrance, saying that you fragrance, you are obstructing our absorption in Harikatha. Gandhena khandita dhiyopyanilam kshipantah. So they do not welcome the fragrance of these flowers. Generally, when the fragrant flowers are emanating fragrance, it's a very pleasant experience. But if that pleasant experience is distracting them from glorifying the Lord Vishnu, then the Vaikuntha-vasis would not enjoy that. They will focus on Harikatha. In this way, all the Vaikuntha-vasis are devoid of any desire for sense gratification, and they are absorbed in glorifying and serving Lord Vishnu. And Brahmaji, right in the beginning of creation, he was fortunate enough to have this darshan of Mahavaikuntha in front of himself. So the Lord has mercifully given this darshan to Brahmaji. And Brahmaji was folding his hands and then seeing this darshan, and he did tapasya for 1,000 celestial years. Brahmaji was doing tapasya according to the instruction that he received from the Lord, through an invisible voice. Then Mahavishnu told Brahmaji, Brahma, I am very pleased with you. I am inviting you to ask any benedictions from me. So Brahmaji, the Lord said that I am very satisfied with your penance, and whenever somebody performs such devotional austerities, they become very dear to me. Devotional austerities are dear to me. I have given you the darshan of my abode, which is the highest possible benediction. I have already given you a spiritual benediction. Now, if you want anything else, you can ask from me. And devotional austerity is very close to my heart. Even my power arises from different austerities. So, when the Lord invited Brahma to ask for anything, Brahmaji asked for 4 things. Actually, he asked some questions. And finally, the 4th thing, he asked for a benediction. He asked 4 questions. Let us see the 4 questions of Brahmaji. So these 4 questions are answered by the Supreme Lord Vishnu in the form of Chatushloki Bhagavatam. Chatushloki Bhagavatam means entire Bhagavatam knowledge is present in these 4 seed shlokas spoken by the Supreme Lord Vishnu to Brahma. So let us see the questions first, and then let us see the answers of Lord Vishnu in the form of Chatushloki. Brahmaji first asked, my dear Lord, can you please tell me about your material and spiritual forms? So in the 2nd canto, 9th chapter, 26th shloka, Brahmaji asks this question. Can you please tell me about your various forms? You have material forms, you have spiritual forms. Ultimately, the Lord does not have any material forms, but the Lord manifests so many material forms. He manifests this universe also. And that material universe is conceived to be the Lord's form, because the universe is a manifestation of Lord's energy, and the energy is non-different from the energetic person. So thus Brahmaji asked, please tell me about your material and spiritual forms. This is the first question. And this question was already asked by Parikshit Maharaj in the previous chapter. And some of the questions asked by Brahmaji are resembling the questions asked by Parikshit Maharaj to Sukadeva Goswami. That's why Sukadeva Goswami, instead of answering the questions directly, he quoted Brahmaji's questions and the Lord Vishnu's answers to those questions, and then he answered Parikshit's questions. The first question asked by Brahma was, I want to know about your material forms and spiritual forms. The second question he asked about the Lord's energies. My dear Lord, you have multifarious energies. You have spiritual energy, you have material energy. May I know how are you operating? How are you functioning with all these energies? How your different energies work to manifest things? So first question was about Lord's forms. Second question was about Lord's energies. Third question he asked about the Lord's activities. He asked, my dear Lord, what are your activities in relationship with the material and spiritual energies? The Lord performs certain activities through material energy. The Lord performs certain activities through spiritual energy. What are your activities? First question about the Lord's forms. Second question about the Lord's energies. Third question about the Lord's activities with those energies in different forms. So these are the first 3 questions asked by Brahma. And he asked a 4th question, which is basically a request. The request was, my dear Lord, now can you please bestow your mercy upon me so that I will execute your instructions? So Brahmaji has been created. He was the first created being, and he has to carry out the creation of this universe. He has to manifest all the planets and different Prajapatis and Manus and sages and Vedas and fine arts. So Brahmaji is the first created being. He has to carry out the creation of the universe. The primary creation is done by the Lord himself, and the secondary creation is done by Brahma. The Supreme Lord creates the ingredients for the formation of this material universe, and he manifests the universe. So the creation of the universe done by the Lord is called primary creation or Sarga. And within the universe, Brahmaji creates various planets and Prajapatis and many other beings. Vedas and fine arts. So this creation carried out by Brahmaji is called secondary creation or Visarga. Sarga is done by Vishnu, Visarga is done by Brahma. Sarga is primary creation, Visarga is secondary creation. So now that Brahmaji has to do his service of creation, Brahmaji was seeking empowerment from the Lord. My dear Lord, can you please bestow your mercy upon me? And so please enable me, please empower me to execute your instructions and carry out this creation without pride and without bondage. Because when we accomplish a very nice service, we could become proud. Or when we are dealing with matter, or end, when we are dealing with matter, there could be material bondage. So Brahmaji has to deal with matter. He has to carry out material creation. So when we are dealing with matter, there could be bondage and there could be pride, there could be deviation. So, Brahmaji requested the Supreme Lord, please give me your mercy so that I carry out this creation without becoming falsely proud or without getting entangled. So these are the 4 requests of Brahmaji. The first question he asked was about the Lord's forms, material and spiritual forms. Second question is about the Lord's material and spiritual energies. Third question is about the Lord's activities that he carries out with his material energy and spiritual energy. And the fourth thing is that please give me your mercy so that I can carry out the service without any bondage and pride. So 4 things. In response to these 4 questions, the Lord will speak Chatushloki Bhagavatam. So in the next slide you can see there are 6 shlokas there. The Lord speaks. Jnanam paramaguhyam me yadvignana samanvitam sarahasyam tadangam cha grihana gaditam maya. Now the Lord says, oh Brahmaji, you have asked me these 4 questions. Now in response to that, I will give you answers, and my answers constitute these things. Jnanam, deep spiritual knowledge. Jnanam paramaguhyam me, very confidential and secret knowledge is there. Jnanam. Yad vignana samanvitam, the practical application of knowledge is also there in my answers. Jnanam paramaguhyam me, yad vignana samanvitam, sarahasyam tadangam cha. So Sarahasyam indicates Prema Bhakti. In my answers, I will also describe Prema Bhakti or loving devotional service unto Krishna. Tadangam cha. And I will also describe the sadhana or the practice that you are supposed to perform to attain that Prema Bhakti. That is sadhana bhakti. Tadangam cha. So in the Lord's answers to the questions of Brahma, we can find knowledge, jnanam, and vijnanam, practical application of that knowledge. 3, rahasyam, which is prema bhakti, devotion unto him. Then second is the practice of devotional service by which we develop love of Godhead. The third thing is prema, which is the result of your bhakti. Okay, result of practice of bhakti. So basically third is the perfection stage, and the fourth is the fourth element of his discussion is the practice stage of bhakti. Okay. So now the Lord will start answering the questions. So in the 33rd shloka of this chapter, the Lord will speak the first shloka of the Chatushloki Bhagavatam. Chatushloki Bhagavatam, the Lord is going to speak now, Vishnu. And the Chatushloki Bhagavatam is basically 4 seed verses of Bhagavatam. And from these 4 verses just kind of summarize in a capsule form, they summarize the entire knowledge of Bhagavatam. And these 4 verses could be expanded to manifest the entirety of Bhagavatam, all 12 cantos of Bhagavatam. So first shloka he says, Ahamevasame nanyadyat sadasatparam pashyadaham yadetacha yovasishyeta sosmyaham. In this shloka, the Lord says that Aham evasamevagre, it is me who is present before the creation of this universe. The Lord says that I am present, I existed before the manifestation of this universe. Then I continue to exist during the maintenance phase of this universe. The third thing is, after the annihilation of the universe, I alone exist. So, the Lord's existence is not dependent on the creation. The ordinary living beings, they manifest in certain forms as human beings or animals or devatas, etc. After the creation of the universe. First the universe is created and the inhabitants of the universe are created later. And when the universe is destroyed, all the inhabitants of the universe are withdrawn into Mahavishnu's body. Thus, the conditioned souls exist from the beginning of the creation till the end of creation of this universe. But the Lord exists beyond this universe. The universe came out of him and it exists for some time, and the universe goes back into him. So the Lord says that I existed before this creation, during the creation. After the creation of this material universe, during the maintenance phase, I existed in my spiritual form. And after the creation also, I continue to exist in my spiritual form in the Vaikuntha. And this universe is basically by material form. Because the universe you compare with the Lord's form, and that is called universal form. That is the material form of the Lord. And the Lord's spiritual form. The Lord in his beautiful, everlasting, enchanting, charming, spiritual form, transcendental form, he always exists beyond the creation and destruction of this material universe. So, first question is answered. Brahmaji asked about the material and spiritual forms of the Lord. The Lord said that in my spiritual form, I always existed beyond the creation and destruction of this material universe. And within this material universe, there is universal form. So that is first shloka in the Chatushloki Bhagavatam. Second shloka, he says, Ritertham yat pratiyeta nat pratiyeta chatmani tadvidyadatmano mayam yatha bhaso yatha tamaha. So in the second question, the Lord says about his energies. He said that whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relationship with me, it is not reality. It is only illusion. So everything that is manifested is only a manifestation of the Lord's energies, either his spiritual energies or material energies. So the Lord has manifested everything through his energies, and if we consider that something is independent of the Lord, because everything is created by the Lord's energies, everything is dependent on him. And if we think that something is disconnected from the Lord, it is not in relationship with the Lord, that is illusion. So everything is a manifestation of the Lord's energy. So this is about the Lord's energy. So it is Maya is to think that something is independent of the Lord or his energies. So everything belongs to the Lord, everything is created by the Lord, everything is manifested by the Lord, everything has its origin in the Supreme Lord and his energies. So if you think anything otherwise, that is called Maya, that is called illusory energy of the Lord. So that is about the second verse, that is the energies of the Lord. And the third shloka, he says, Yatha mahanti bhutani bhuteshu chavaseshvanu pravishtanya pravishtani tatha teshu nateshvaham. In this shloka, the Lord speaks about his activities in relationship with his energies. He says, Yatha mahanti bhutani bhuteshu chavaseshvanu. Just like the material elements enter the universe and they do not enter the universe also. Means the material elements stay outside also and they stay inside also of the universe. For example, there is some object. So you have some phone. So there is earth element within this. So earth element has entered within this object and earth element is there outside the object also. So the Lord similarly exists within everything and is outside everything also. In the in this Leela where Lord Krishna manifested all the universes within his belly to Mother Yashoda. In the 10th canto Bhagavatam, 8th chapter, there is Mridabhakshana Leela, where Krishna eats dirt. And when Krishna ate dirt, Balaramji and all the other Gopas went and complained to Mother Yashoda, and Mother Yashoda came and asked Krishna to open his mouth, and Krishna opened his mouth, and Mother Yashoda was trying to see if there is some dirt in his mouth, but Krishna had revealed all the universes within his belly. Entire universe is seen within the belly of Krishna, and Mother Yashoda was astonished to see. Thus, entire universe is there within the body of Krishna, and Krishna is there within the universe also. Krishna was sitting in mother's lap. in Gokul, in Vrindavan, and Vrindavan is a part of this Bharatavarsha, and this Bharatavarsha is a part of this Bhumandala, and the Bhumandala is one of the planetary systems in the 14 planetary systems in this material universe, and the entire material universe manifested from Mahavishnu's body. Like that, Krishna entered this universe. The Supreme Lord entered this universe, and the universe is there within the Lord also. So basically, the Lord has multiple expansions. How can we understand? The Lord is there inside everything, and everything is there within the Lord. Everything is inside Him, and He is inside everything. How do we understand? It seems inconceivable. Simple. The Lord has so many expansions, unlimited expansions. Now, as I discussed in the beginning of the session, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead who stays in His eternal Dham, Goloka Vrindavan, in the spiritual abode. And His immediate expansion is Balaramji. And from Balaramji manifests this Chaturvyuha expansions, Vasudeva, Sankarshna, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. And from the Sankarshna of this first Chaturvyuha, Lord Narayana manifests. And from Narayana comes another Chaturvyuha, Vasudeva, Sankarshna, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. And from the Sankarshna of the second Chaturvyuha manifests Mahavishnu. And from the bodily pores of Mahavishnu, millions of universes manifest. Thus, all the universes are there within Mahavishnu's body, who is an expansion of an expansion of an expansion of Krishna. So, all the universes are there within his body. That is clear. And Mahavishnu expands himself as Garbhodakasaya Vishnu and enters within every universe. Thus, the Lord is there within the universe also, and the universe is there within the Lord also. The universe is there within Mahavishnu, and Garbhodakasaya Vishnu is there within the universe. So the Lord has multiple expansions. Through these expansions, the Lord is there inside everything and outside everything. And that Garbhodakasaya Vishnu expands himself as Kshirodakasaya Vishnu, and Kshirodakasaya Vishnu enters the hearts of every single living entity as Paramatma. In fact, he enters within every single atom to sustain this universe. Thus, the Lord is there inside everything, the Lord is there outside everything also. So, and similar, just as material elements are there within everything, material elements are there outside also. All these objects, this chair, this mic, this phone, this table, everything is a transformation of the element earth. So, earth is there in these objects, and all these objects are there resting on the earth. Earth is there outside also, earth is there inside also. Earth is there in this object, very little element, but a big earth is there outside also. So everything, so many objects are made of the element earth. Similarly, other elements are also there. Ether is there, sky is there, wind is there. So now air is there within our body. Air is there outside our bodies also. If material elements can be there within and outside, why can't the Supreme Lord be there inside and outside of everything? Yatha mahanti bhutani bhuteshu chavaseshvanu pravishtani apravishtani. He enters everything. That is pravishtani. Apravishtani means he does not enter everything. Pravishtani apravishtani tatha teshvaham. So this third sloka is describing the Supreme Lord's activities in relationship with his energies. The Lord, through his energies, through his expansions, he is there everywhere, and everything is there within him also. And this also indicates the vision of a pure devotee. In this shloka, the Lord is saying that I am there everywhere, inside and outside. So Mother Kunti also says that Maya Javanika Channam Agnadhokshajam Avyayam Nalakshase Mudhadrisha Nato Natya Dharo Yatha. She says, Namasya Purusham Tvadyam Ishwaram Prakriteha Param Alaksham Sarva Bhutanam Antar Bahir Avasthitam. Antar Bahir Avasthitam means the Lord is there inside, Lord is there outside also. So the Lord is within everything and outside everything. And this is the vision of pure devotees, and ordinary people cannot understand this. So the vision of a pure devotee is that he sees Krishna everywhere. He sees God everywhere because he has love for God. Like the reality is God is there within everything and outside everything. And that reality is known to a pure devotee who sees God everywhere. So that's the beautiful vision explained in the third shloka in the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, the fourth shloka, last shloka. Etavadeva jignasyam tattva jignasunatmanah anvayavyatirekabhyam yasyat sarvatra sarvadha. What was the fourth request of Brahmaji? Brahmaji told the Lord, my dear Lord, can you please bestow your mercy upon me so that I will not be affected by pride or bondage while doing my service of creation, following your instruction. Then the Lord responded to that saying this sloka, Etavadeva jignasam tattva jignasanatmanah. Etavat eva. One should search the absolute truth up to the point of seeing him everywhere. In the third sloka, the Lord said that a pure devotee sees him everywhere, inside and outside everything, because the Lord is present inside and outside everything. So up to reaching this stage, to reach this stage, one has to practice devotional service by inquiring about absolute truth. Etavadeva jignasam. Jignasa means inquisitiveness. One has to inquire from a guru. Etavadeva jignasam tattva jignasunatmanah. You should become tattva jignasu. You should be very inquisitive to understand the tattva or the truth or the reality of the Supreme Lord. So that inquiry, the process of inquiry, that inquisitiveness and the whole practice is sadhana bhakti. So the fourth shloka says that we have to practice devotional service. And if we practice devotional service, then we will be able to come to the stage of seeing God everywhere. So, Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam means directly or indirectly, you try to understand the Lord by your inquiries and by your practice of devotional service. Yasyat sarvatra sarvada. Always you should perform bhakti. So, to summarize, Brahmaji asked 4 questions. I will summarize Chatushloki in 3 minutes now. So Brahmaji asked 4 questions. Then the Lord responded. First question is about the energies of the Lord. First question is about the forms of the Lord, the material and spiritual forms. Second question is about the material and spiritual energies of the Lord. Third question is about the activities of the Lord that he performs in relationship with his material and spiritual energies. Fourth question was actually a request for the mercy of the Lord so that Brahma can carry out the creation without any pride or bondage. So now, in response to these 4 questions, Lord Vishnu started replying. First question is about his forms. So the Lord's spiritual form existed before the creation of this material universe, during the maintenance phase of this material universe, and after the dissolution or destruction of this universe also. So the Lord always exists in his spiritual form, and the material world is considered to be the universal form or a material form of the Lord. That is about the forms. Then second shloka, in the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, the Lord spoke about his energies. The Lord has spiritual energies and material energies. So to be in spiritual consciousness is to see that everything is being manifested by the Lord's, Supreme Lord's energies. But if we cannot relate the activities of this material world or things in this material world with the Supreme Lord's energies, if we think that things are existing without depending on the Lord or his energies, then that is Maya, that is illusory energy of the Lord. So everything is resting on the Lord's energies. So the knowledge about Krishna's forms and Krishna's energies together is called Sambandha Jnana. So that is the first 2 shlokas. So that is absolute truth and relative truth. Absolute truth is Krishna exists everywhere, and Krishna's existence is not dependent on this universe, but the universe is dependent on Krishna's existence. The second shloka says the universe is dependent on Krishna. If you think that it is independent, then you are in Maya, in illusory energy of the Lord. So these 2 things together constitute the Sambandha Jnana, or our understanding about the Lord and his energies and our relationship between the Lord, with the Lord. Then the third shloka is about Prema Bhakti, or this is about the ultimate prayojana, that is love of Godhead. That is to understand that the Lord exists within everything and outside everything, and to develop that vision. To be able to see Krishna everywhere is to have love of Godhead, that is described in the third shloka of Chatushloki Bhagavatam. And the fourth shloka describes how to attain this stage described in the third shloka. The fourth shloka says, you should inquire about the absolute truth. Tattva Jignasu, you should become Tattva Jignasu. You should be very curious and inquisitive to know the absolute truth, know the Supreme Lord, and perform Bhakti Yoga. So practicing of Bhakti Yoga is emphasized in the fourth shloka. And if we take shelter of Bhakti Yoga, one will not be deviated, or one will not become proud, or one will not be in bondage. This is an answer to the fourth question asked by Brahma. So this is called Chatushloki Bhagavatam. So Brahmaji heard this Chatushloki Bhagavatam from the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and then he also expanded this Chatushloki and then spoke to Narada Muni. Narada Muni spoke to Vyasadeva. If you see in the chart later in the slide, so Krishna spoke Bhagavatam to Brahma, Brahma spoke Bhagavatam to Narada Muni, Narada Muni spoke Bhagavatam to Vyasadeva, Vyasadeva spoke Bhagavatam to Sukadeva Goswami, Sukadeva Goswami spoke Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj and Suta Goswami, and Suta Goswami spoke Bhagavatam to Naimisharanya sages. So in this way, entire Bhagavatam is descending from the Supreme Lord. And in the 12th canto of Bhagavatam, there is a beautiful shloka that says that whoever is speaking in this bona fide parampara is actually a representative of the Lord. Kasmayena vibhasito yamatulo gnana pradipah pura tadrupena cha naradaya munaye krishnaya tadrupina योगींद्राय तदात्मनाथ भगवद्राताय कारुण्यत तत्शुद्धं विमलं विशोकमृतं सत्यं परं धीमहि. In this shloka, it is said that in the beginning of the creation, the Supreme Lord Vishnu or Krishna spoke this Bhagavatam knowledge to Brahma. And Brahma spoke that Bhagavatam to Narada, Narada spoke to Vyasa, Vyasa spoke to Suka, Shuka spoke to Suta and Parikshit, and Suta Goswami spoke to Shaunakadi Rishis. So whoever is speaking this Bhagavatam in the parampara coming from Krishna is actually a pure representative of Krishna, and it is Krishna who is speaking Bhagavatam through this transcendental, transparent via medium of parampara. Whether Krishna is speaking Bhagavatam to, Krishna spoke Bhagavatam to Brahma, and in the form of Brahma, Krishna spoke Bhagavatam to Vyasa. In the form of Vyasadeva, it is Krishna who spoke Bhagavatam to Sukadeva Goswami. In the form of Sukadeva Goswami, it is Krishna who has spoken Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj and Suta Goswami. It is Krishna who spoke Bhagavatam to Naimisharanya sages in the form of Suta Goswami. Thus, whoever is speaking in the parampara is a representative of Krishna. These are as good as Krishna's words. So, the transcendental teachings of Krishna are transparently transmitted through this parampara, Guru Sishya parampara. So, when there is a transparent transmission of transcendental teachings through this parampara, then there is a transformation in the heart, and that can completely vanquish the tribulations in this material world. So, there should be transparency in our transmission of Bhagavatam message. Yes, definitely one has to present the message of Bhagavatam in such a way that modern people can understand and digest, and different people can do it in different capacities. But the original message of Bhagavatam has to be preserved, and it has to be transmitted as it is in a way that common people can understand. So that completes the 9th chapter of Bhagavatam. And we come to the last chapter, 10th chapter of Bhagavatam, 2nd canto. So in this canto, in this chapter, Sukadeva Goswami defines the 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. It will take a few more minutes to complete this. So Sukadeva Goswami says, Atra sargo visargascha sthanam poshanamutayah manvantaresha nukatha nirodho muktirashrayah. Atra sargo visargascha. This one shloka describes the 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. Sarga. The first topic is Sarga. Sarga is creation done by the Lord. Second topic is Visarga. Creation done by Brahma, which is called secondary creation. Then Sthanam. Sthana means the positioning of various living entities in different planetary systems, which is the geography of the universe. Sthanam. Poshanam is protection offered by the Lord. Uti is inclination to perform auspicious or inauspicious activities. Then Manvantara is the reign of Manus. And Ishanukatha means the stories of the Supreme Lord and his incarnations and his devotees. And Nirodha is dissolution. Mukti, liberation. Ashraya, supreme shelter. So these are the 10 topics of Bhagavatam. We will define and elaborate on them. I just gave the English equivalents of these 10 topics. So these 10 topics are the subject matter of entire Srimad Bhagavatam. Dashamasya Vishuddhyartam Navanam Ihalakshanam Varnayanti Mahatmanaha Shrutenarthena Chanjasa. So these 10 topics of Bhagavatam are spoken by great souls, exalted personalities. Ultimately, the first 9 topics of Bhagavatam are meant to bring us to the 10th topic, which is Ashraya. The 10th topic is called Ashraya or supreme shelter. So, these 10 topics are discussed throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, and these are described with various degrees of emphasis in various cantos of Bhagavatam. Jiva Goswami says that all the 10 topics of Bhagavatam are present in all the 12 cantos of Bhagavatam with various degrees of emphasis. However, by a careful analytical study of Bhagavatam, we see that certain topics are highlighted more in some cantos than in other cantos, as indicated by Prabhupada and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in their commentaries. So all 10 topics are there in all 12 cantos with various degrees of emphasis, but some topics are exclusively and some topics are prominently discussed in certain cantos. We will see in which canto describes which topic now in the next few minutes. And this Bhagavatam is non-different from the form of the Supreme Lord. There's a beautiful shloka in the Padma Purana. You can see the next slide. Padau yadiyau prathamadvitiyau tritiyaturiyau kathitau yaduru nabhistatha panchama eva shashto bhujantaram doryugalam tathanyau kantastu rajan navamo yadiyo मुखारविंदम दशमः प्रफुल्लम एकादशो यस्य ललाटपट्टम शिरोपि तु द्वादश एव भाति. In this shloka of Padma Purana, the 12 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam are compared to the limbs of Krishna's transcendental body. Padau yadiyau prathamadvitiyau. The first 2 cantos of Bhagavatam are compared to the lotus feet of Krishna. Padau yadiyau prathamadvitiyau. And trutiya turyau kathitau yaduru. The third and fourth cantos of Bhagavatam are compared to Krishna's thighs. And nabhis tatha panchama eva. The navel of the Lord is compared to the 5th canto of Bhagavatam. Shashto bhujantaram. Bhuja means arms. Bhujantaram means the area between the arms, that is chest. The 6th canto is compared to the chest of Krishna. Dor yugalam tathanyo. The 7th and 8th cantos are compared to the arms of Krishna. And kantastu rajan navamo yadiyo. The 9th canto of Bhagavatam is compared to the throat of Krishna. Mukharavindam dashamaha prafullam. Krishna's beautiful, smiling, blossoming lotus face is compared to the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. And Ekadasho yasya lalatapattam. The forehead of Krishna is the 11th canto of Bhagavatam. Shiropitu dvadasha eva bhati. The head is the 12th canto of Bhagavatam. So in this way, entire Bhagavatam is compared to the transcendental spiritual body of Krishna. And just as we take darshan of the Lord's deity from lotus feet to the lotus face, similarly we have to study Srimad Bhagavatam from the 1st canto to the 12th canto systematically, and canto by canto we need to proceed. Prabhupada always condemned and discouraged the attempt of directly entering to the esoteric topics of 10th canto, which is like Rasa Panchadhyaya and all. So one needs to study canto, Bhagavatam cantos, canto by canto, chapter by chapter, to develop a very systematic understanding of Srimad Bhagavatam nicely. So these are the 10 topics of Bhagavatam described in the 12 cantos of Bhagavatam, and the 12 cantos of Bhagavatam are non-different from various bodily limbs of the Lord. Basically, Bhagavatam is book form of Krishna. Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna. And that Bhagavatam has 12 topics. Now you see the chart where I had given in which canto which topic is prominently discussed, and that is corresponding to which limb of the Lord. So now you see the first canto of Bhagavatam is more or less a very wonderful prelude to the entire Bhagavatam. Of course, first canto also describes prominently so many topics. First canto has Ashraya, first canto has Poshanam. So first we will go through the definitions of all these cantos. First is Sarga. The first two cantos describe a brief introduction while covering certain topics, and they also describe Sarga, Visarga, Poshanam and Ashraya like that. Second canto describes Sarga and Visarga. Now we will define the topics also. Sarga means the primary creation done by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu himself. The manifestation of all the universal ingredients and the formation of the universe, everything is carried out by the Lord. This is called Sarga, which is carried out by the Supreme Lord. That is primary creation. And this is slightly described in the first and second cantos. First canto we have seen in the 3rd chapter, first 5 verses. And second canto we have seen in the 5th chapter also. And in the last chapter also we will see Sarga and Visarga slightly. So this Sarga topic is discussed in the first 2 cantos slightly, and prominently in the 3rd canto, beginning from the 5th chapter till 11th chapter. This is all Sarga, primary creation done by the Lord. And second topic is Visarga. Visarga means the secondary creation done by Brahma. And Lord Brahma creates the Manus, various planetary systems, various Prajapatis, sages and Vedas, fine arts, and five categories of ignorance. All this Brahmaji creates. So that is described again in the 3rd canto of Bhagavatam. It begins from the 12th chapter. 12th chapter, Brahmaji begins his creation, and throughout the 3rd canto this creation is described. Throughout the 4th canto also this Visarga topic is described. 5th canto, 15th chapter, till 5th canto, 15th chapter, the Visarga portion is described. So the Visarga topic is covered in the 3rd canto, 4th canto and 5th canto half. So Brahmaji creates the 5 features of ignorance, he creates the Vedas and everything, and he creates Rakshasas and Devatas and Prajapatis, Manus, and then first he creates, the first Manu was Swayambhu Manu, and Swayambhu Manu had 5 children. They are Devahuti, Akuti, Prasuti, 3 daughters, Uttanapad and Priyavrata, 2 sons. So the lineages of the daughters and sons of Swayambhu Manu are also part of Visarga, because Visarga is creation done by Brahma and his descendants also. Thus, the 3rd canto, 12th chapter till 5th canto, 15th chapter, Visarga is prominently described. Others are also there, but Visarga is the prominent topic there. And next topic, 3rd topic of Bhagavatam is Sthanam. Sthanam means the positioning of various living entities in different planetary systems. That is called the geography of the universe, creation of different planetary systems, so that they become the residential places of different living entities in different flavors of consciousness. Some people are predominantly in mode of goodness, they are made into devatas, they have Svargaloka for them to reside. And some people are predominantly into passion, they are made into earthly beings, Bhumandala is there for them. And passion is there everywhere, goodness is also there everywhere, but some people are predominantly in goodness, some people are predominantly in ignorance like Rakshasas and all that. So like the different planetary systems are created to accommodate living entities who are influenced very uniquely by a unique combination of material modes. So the creation of this universe, or the geography of this universe, creation of different planetary systems, creation of Bhumandala, creation of 14 planetary systems and hellish planets. So all these are movements of the sun, movements of the moon, all these are described in the 5th canto, 16th chapter till 26th chapter. That is sthanam. Sarga, Visarga, sthanam. 4th is poshanam. So the sthanam is described predominantly in the 2nd canto, 5th canto, second half of 5th canto. Then 6th canto describes this 4th topic called poshanam. Poshanam means protection offered by the Lord. The Lord is so kind and affectionate towards his devotees that he would protect them even if the devotees happen to do some activities that are against dharma also. Not that the Lord encourages adharma, but the Lord is forgiving. So that forgiving aspect of the Lord, protecting aspect of the Lord is described predominantly in the 6th canto of Bhagavatam, and the prominent theme of 6th canto is Poshanam. Poshanam is protection. In the 6th canto we see that Ajamil episode, Indra episode, Vritrasura episode, Chitraketu episode, all these are showing how the Lord protects his devotees. Indra. And next topic is Uti, the 5th topic. Uti means inclination. And inclination is of two types, auspicious and inauspicious inclination. The auspicious inclination of Prahalad Maharaj and inauspicious inclination of Hiranyakashipu, and the mixed inclinations of different people in Varnashrama Dharma. So they are all described in the 7th canto of Bhagavatam. The 6th topic is Manvantara. Manvantara means the reign of Manus. In one day of Brahma, there are 1000 Divya Yugas or 1000 Kalpas. One day of Brahma is Kalpa, and within one day you have 1000 Divya Yugas or Chatur Yugas. One Divya Yuga is a combination of these 4 Yugas, Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga and Kali Yuga. So one day of Brahma has 1000 Divya Yugas, and there are 14 Manus ruling during this one day of Brahma. Thus each Manu will get around 71 to 72 Divya Yugas. They will get to rule like that. So there are 14 Manus in this one day of Brahma, and already 6 Manvantaras have passed. We are in the 7th Manvantara now, and in future there are 7 Manvantaras. And in each Manvantara, there are 6 types of personalities or office bearers. They are expansions of the Lord who orchestrate various activities of that Manvantara. So these 6 personalities of all the 14 Manvantaras are described in the 8th canto of Bhagavatam. So the 6 personalities are Manvantaro, Manur Deva, Manuputra, Sureshwaraha, Rushayo, Amshavatarascha, Harim Shadvidham Uchyate. So Manvantara has Manu and Manu's sons, Manuputras, Devatas, and the king of Devatas Indra, and the Sapta Rishis, 7 sages, and Manvantara Avatara, an incarnation of the Lord. These are the 6 categories of people who orchestrate various affairs of this universe, and they change every Manvantara. All these are posts. Saptarshis change, demigods change, Indra changes, Manu changes. So like that, Manvantara Avatara changes. So like that, the 6 elements of each Manvantara of the 14 Manvantaras in this day of Brahma are described in the 8th canto. 8th canto prominent theme is Manvantara. Then the next topic of Bhagavatam is Ishanukatha. Ishanukatha means the stories or the pastimes of the Supreme Lord and his devotees in specific, and his various incarnations. They are described in the 9th canto of Bhagavatam through the stories of various kings in Sun dynasty and Moon dynasty. And here we also see the pastimes of Ramachandra, Parashurama, and many other exalted kings in the 9th canto. That is Ishanukatha. Then next topic is Nirodha. Nirodha means dissolution. There are 4 types of destruction or pralaya. Nirodha is pralaya, destruction. So first type of pralaya is elemental annihilation or prakritika pralaya. That means destruction of the entire universe at the end of life of Brahma. Second type of destruction is naimittika pralaya, or the occasional annihilation that happens at the end of day of Brahma, during the night of Brahma. Their entire universe is within, all the planetary systems within the universe are withdrawn within the body of Garbhodakasaya Vishnu. But in the first type of pralaya, which is Prakritika pralaya, entire universe is withdrawn within the body of Mahavishnu. There Brahmaji's life ends. Then third type of pralaya is Nitya pralaya. Constantly some deterioration is happening. You kept a flower here. Tomorrow you come and see that flower is faded because the flower is getting destroyed moment by moment. We may not perceive it, but we cannot perceive it moment by moment, but we can perceive it after certain intervals of time. That is called Nitya pralaya. And the fourth type of pralaya is called Atyantika pralaya. Means the ultimate destruction that happens when the false ego of the living entity is destroyed. So the false ego of the living entity is destroyed, then the living entity can go back to the spiritual world. This is called Atyantika pralaya, the destruction of false ego. That is basically mukti or liberation. So that brings us to the ninth topic. And this Nirodha topic or Pralaya topic is discussed predominantly in the 12th canto of Bhagavatam. And Mukti topic, ninth topic, is described in the 11th canto. Mukti means liberation. Through Uddhava Gita, through the conversation between Nimi and Navayogendra, the topic of liberation is elaborately discussed in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam. And the 10th topic, the final topic, is Ashraya. Ashraya means supreme shelter. Who is our supreme shelter? Sri Krishna, the Supreme Lord Krishna. And Krishna's pastimes are described so elaborately in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, which is the Ashraya. Just like Krishna is the shelter of all incarnations and all devotees, that Krishna is described in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, and the 10th canto is like the shelter of all the other 11 cantos. The topic Ashraya is the shelter of all the other 9 topics. Krishna is the shelter of all the... Krishna, who is described in the 10th canto, is the shelter of all the other incarnations and devotees of the Lord who are described in the other 11 cantos of Bhagavatam. So, the 10th canto is the ultimate essence of Bhagavatam, and all the 9 topics or other 11 cantos are described to bring the reader to the point of this 10th canto, to the point of taking shelter of the Supreme Lord Krishna. So, these are the 10 topics of Bhagavatam. Sukadeva Goswami just defines these 10 topics and elaborates these 10 topics in the rest of Srimad Bhagavatam. I gave a very quick and brief summary of all the 10 topics. And after defining these 10 topics, Sukadeva Goswami describes the Sarga and Visarga in a very brief manner. First, he gives the topic of Sarga. So, Mahavishnu enters into each and every universe as Garbhodakasaya Vishnu. And from the body of Garbhodakasaya Vishnu, the universe manifested. So there is a description of the universal form in this chapter, 10th chapter also, where the Lord, the Supreme Lord is conceived to be the combination of all the living entities within the universe, and all the sensual urges, the sensual functions of the living entities exist because there are sensual urges or sensual functions for the Supreme Lord in his universal form also, Virat Rupa also. So, thus, all the senses and the sense devatas are manifested in this universe so that we all can perform sensual functions. And the manifestation of these senses and sense devatas and sensual functions is compared to the manifestation of universal form, or the Virat Rupa. As I discussed before in the previous sessions also, Virat Rupa is basically an imaginary form of the Lord, where different aspects of this universe, different phenomena of the universe are compared to the Lord's personality, the Lord's form. So that is the universal form, and the description in this chapter, the universal form description in this chapter is basically about the manifestation of senses and sense devatas and various living entities who perform with different sensual functions. So, thus Virat Rupa manifested, basically universe manifested. And after that, Sukadeva Goswami describes Visarga, or the secondary creation of Brahma, in very brief. He says that Brahmaji has manifested different personalities, and also Sukadeva Goswami was about to begin the topic of Padma Kalpa, means the first day of Brahma. So he was about to say that, and he wanted to continue the whole process of creation now. He wanted to begin the topics of creation and secondary creation. Then suddenly this conversation that's happening between Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj goes to the outer loop. Basically, Sukadeva Goswami, whatever Sukadeva Goswami spoke to Parikshit Maharaj was being narrated by Suta Goswami to Naimisharanya sages. So, after hearing the conversation between Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj up to this point, the Shaunakadi rishis immediately ask Suta Goswami some other subject matter. So Sukadeva Goswami was about to speak about Padmakalpa, and Suta Goswami is narrating what Sukadeva Goswami has spoken. But the Naimisharanya sages said that, oh, Suta Goswami, earlier in the first canto you said that Vidura went to Haridwar and heard some two cantos, heard a lot of Srimad Bhagavatam descriptions from Maitreya Muni. We want to know about their conversation. So this question asked by the Shaunakadi rishis to Suta Goswami brings us to the third canto. So in the third canto, we see how Vidura met Maitreya Muni and how they conversed and what are the different subject matters that they have discussed in third canto and fourth canto. We will see in the next episode. So this completes the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. In the second canto, we have seen a quick summary of first 10 chapters, the 10 chapters of second canto. And in the last 3 chapters, we have seen the questions asked by Parikshit Maharaj in the 8th chapter, Chatushloki Bhagavatam in the 9th chapter, 10 topics of Bhagavatam in the 10th chapter. So thank you all very much. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.